Studying now a mimer, an essay from Rav Yitzchak Mirsky in Hegyonei Halacha. This one is in Chelik Bet, in the second volume of the 3-volume set, on page 126, and it's called Birchat HaNehenin. We're going to give a slow introduction, background, and then we're going to try to jump into what I think is the main issue of Birchat HaNehenin, which is going to take the majority of the time that we have today. The Gemara says in Brachos, on Daf Lamed Hey and Aleph, that Chayav Adam Levarech Kodem HaOchel Uliacher HaOchel. So we have a Bracha Lefanea and a Bracha Lachrea. However, this one dimension of the Bracha Lefanea, which is our focal point today, Bracha Lefanea, and that is unique in contrast to the Bracha Lachrea. With regard to the Bracha Lachrea, the Torah says V'achalta v'savata, and you have to get to a point of what's called Kedei Svia. And there are many shittas as to what Kedei Svia means, but you have to be satiated. So there's a minimum volume, less than which does not generate a chiyuv of Bracha Lachrea. Not so in the case of Bracha Ufaneha, and we'll try to explain why. In the case of Bracha Ufaneha, even a mashu, no matter what small volume, small minuscule amount of food you're eating, you require a bracha. And this is based on the Gemara's principle there in Brachos, on Daf Lamed Hey, Kol HaNehenin min ha'olam hazeh b'lo bracha ki'ilu ma'al. And that is the most important formulated statement in all of Shas, all of Poskim, about Bracha Lefaneh, about Birchat HaNehenin. That if you have Hana, you have benefit from this world of Achila of Shasiyah without a bracha, it's as if you are Moel. Mem, Ayin, Lamed. Me'ilah means stealing from Hegdesh. And one would wonder, why would Hegdesh play a role over here? We're not talking about Hegdesh. We're talking about a piece of bread. We're talking about an apple, an orange. It's not Hegdesh. No one made it Hegdesh. And yet, the Gemara says, Ki'ilu ma, without the bracha, it's as if you eat or drink and benefit and enjoy, it's as if you were Moel Behegdish. But fascinating, and I think this sheds a major light on it, is the source for this. The Gemara actually quotes a pasuk in Tehillim. It's a very famous pasuk. We say it all the time. Lashem ha'aretz umaloa. The entire world, the entire universe, and everything therein belongs to God. God possesses everything. And that's what Hegdesh is really all about. Fundamentally, Hegdesh means something that's in the possession of Almighty God. And therefore, in order to benefit from Hegdesh, you have to get permission from the owner. And the owner is Hegdesh, is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem Aretz Mloa. You have to figure out how to get permission from him. Now, we know exactly how to get permission in the case of Hegdesh Mamish, in real Hegdesh, and that is Pidyon. Now, again, Pidyon doesn't always work in Hegdesh. There are two categories of Hegdesh. So Hegdesh as a concept bifurcates into two subdivisions. There's what's called Kedushas HaGuf, and then there's something called Kedushas Damim. We're talking now in our discussion about Kedushas Damim, which means that the object is not inherently Hegdesh in every fiber of its structure, but rather the object represents a value, a market value, and that market value belongs to Hegdesh. Pidyon means that I'm getting back that value, and I'm converting it back into its original state of chud. What does this all have to do with Birchat HaNehenin? We're not studying Hegdesh today. But from the fact that the Gemara says that without a Birchat HaNehenin, you're a Moel, it means that the Gemara took Lashem ha'aretz umaloa literally. The word Lashem is a Lashon Hegdesh. For example, if I have a table and I want to dedicate it to Hegdesh, I announce and pronounce Lashem Hegdesh. Lashem, the word Lashem means let it be dedicated to God, and God now becomes the possessor. But the pasuk in David HaMelech is saying Lashem Aretz Umaloa. Everything is Lashem. Everything is Hegdesh. And therefore we have to ask the question, how do I remove the status of Hegdesh on everything in this universe. I have a loaf of bread in front of me. You're telling me it's Hegdesh Lashem Haaretz U'Maloa. How can I benefit from it? Hegdesh is Aser Ba'ana. And the answer is the bracha. Because the pasuk says, Haaretz Nasan Libnei Adam, that God gave the earth to man. How do we reconcile these two verses? One verse says, Lashem Haaretz U'Maloa, everything belongs to God. The other verse says, Haaretz Nasan Libnei Adam, that man is the possessor of everything in this universe. So will the real owner please stand up? Who is the owner? And the Gemara answers, Kan Kodem Bracha, Kan Liachar Bracha. Before you recite the bracha, it's Lashem Haaretz U'Maloa. It belongs to the Rebbeinu Shalom. And if you benefit from it at this point in time, you're a Moel Behegdish, Lashem Haaretz U'Maloa. But Liachar Bracha, after you recited the bracha, then Haaretz Nasan Livnei Adam. Then it becomes ours. Our method by which we acquire possession and we are allowed to benefit from Hegdesh, our method is bracha, which means that we can now set up a mathematical formula. Bracha is to chulin what pidyon is to Hegdesh. Just like in Hegdesh, God gives me permission to enjoy the benefit of Hegdesh if and when I implement a pidyon and I redeem the Hegdesh. There's a way of redeeming everything in this universe that belongs to Hashem, and the method of doing so is the bracha. The bracha becomes the pidyon. And what this means is that up until the point that I recite the bracha, if everything is Hegdesh, and it's Aser Ba'ana, and it's Lashem Haaretz U'Maloa, then I'm considered Moel Behegdesh by benefiting from Hegdesh without reciting a bracha. How far can we go with this? And Rav Mirsky here in this article quotes Rav Shlomo Kluger. Rav Shlomo Kluger lived about, probably by now it's 2 centuries ago. And he claims, Rav Shlomo Kluger, that if you would take matzah on the night of Pesach and eat it without a bracha, without the bracha of Hamotzi Lechem Min Haaretz, and by the way, even Sfaradim recite that bracha on the night of Pesach where they eat matzah. The whole year round they make mazonos on matzah. If you were to eat the matzah on Leil Pesach for the purpose of fulfilling the mitzvah of matzah, but you omitted the bracha Hamotzi Lechem Min Haaretz, you're not yotzei the mitzvah of matzah. An incredible chiddush of Reb Shlomo Kluger. Where does he get this from? And he gets it from the Gemara of Hagozel Matzah Lo Yotza. If a person steals matzah from someone else and he eats it l'shem mitzvah, he did not fulfill his mitzvah. Anybody know why? What principle operates here to undermine and disqualify a mitzvah on something that's stolen, like a stolen lulav or a stolen matzah? Don't all answer at once. Again, you're going to have to demute yourself.
Mitzvah Ba'avera.
Excellent, Ruben. Thank you so much. Ruben always saves my life over here. A lifesaver. You should join that Tzala people. Mitzvah Ba'avera. The Gemara says at the beginning of Perek Lulav HaGazul, third Perek of Sukkah, that if you steal a lulav, you're not yotzei the mitzvah of lulav and a stolen lulav because the mitzvah ba'avera. Comes along with Shlomo Kluger and he says that matzah without a bracha is gazel. What do you mean gazel? It's me'ilah. What is me'ilah? Me'ilah is to hegdesh what gzela is to chulin. The word me'ilah is synonymous with the concept of gzela, except that you're stealing from God, from hegdesh. And if you didn't make a bracha, the Gemara says, is ma'al Hashem haaretz u'maloa. It belongs to Hashem. How can you eat it, benefit from it, consume it without reciting a bracha? You did so, you stole it from hegdesh. And if you stole it, then the matzah is guzzle. And if the matzah is guzzle, then it's a stolen matzah. It's mitzvah baba avera, which disqualifies your mitzvah. An unbelievable chiddush of Reb Shlomo Kluger. And I would say the following. In my humble opinion, he's making one assumption, which is true, but another assumption, which I'm not sure is true. One assumption he's making is that even if the bracha is d'Rabbanan, now we'll have to see about that on the next page. We have a whole page here to discuss whether Birchat HaNehenin Kodem Hana is a mitzvah d'oraisa or it's only d'Rabbanan. But let's assume it's d'Rabbanan. That's a simple shot. The Torah never required a bracha l'faneh. The Torah requires a bracha l'achreah. Can a mitzvah d'Rabbanan of bracha disqualify and void a mitzvah d'oraisa of matzah? Follow this. On a d'oraisa level, I ate the matzah. I was certainly yotzei the mitzvah. Nervous, what else? I didn't make a bracha. So I didn't fulfill a mitzvah d'Rabbanan. Can a violation of a d'Rabbanan uproot and disqualify a d'oraisa? Do we have any precedent for such a thing? And Reb Shlomo Kluger holds that even an avera d'Rabbanan can void a mitzvah d'oraisa. The problem is, I don't know where he got that from, but I know it's true. Once the Rabbanan required a bracha, and once the Rabbanan, as a result of their injunction, have classified eating without a bracha as gzela min ha'hegdesh, as me'ilah, then that could undermine and disqualify a mitzvah d'oraisa. But I have another problem. And here, I have trouble. I have trouble with this chiddush of Reb Shlomo. It's too revolutionary for me. What did he steal? He stole the loaf of bread? I'll tell you what he stole. He stole the bracha. God wants the bracha. God is willing to give you this world, because the pasuk says, "Ha'aretz nasan livnei adam," but God wants to demand a bracha, and that's your payment. So you've denied God the bracha that's coming to Him, the capital H. You have not acknowledged, out of a deep sense of gratitude, that God gave you this bread. And it's Lashem Haaretz U'Loah. Everything that you have, you get from God. So you owe God a debt of gratitude. And without the bracha, you're an ingrate because you've stolen God's bracha. But mitzvah baba avera is something entirely different. Mitzvah baba avera means that the chefza shel mitzvah is a chefza shel avera. And I'll prove it to you. The Gemara tells us in the Yerushalmi, in Masechta Shabbos, that if you carry matzah when Pesach overlaps with Shabbos, so it's a Shabbos of Pesach, first night of Tesvav B'Nisan is Shabbos, and you carry the matzah from Rishus Harabim into Rishus HaYachid, and you ate the matzah. You violated a chiyuv skila d'oraisa of meleches hotzah, which is one of the 39 melechos, and you yotzei the mitzvah of matzah. Why? And the Yerushalmi answers, because it's not similar to guzzle, to stealing a matzah, because in guzzle, the chefza of the mitzvah is guzzle. But carrying the matzah, Daled Amos or Mirshus L'Shus, is not able to generate a change in the chefza shel mitzvah. It's the same object that it was before you carried it and after you carried it. So we see clearly.
Isn't that that would be comparable to Hashevis Aveda going out in by returning a stolen object without an Eruv.
Okay, I wouldn't negate his mitzvah just because he violated an Avera. Mitzvah above Avera doesn't mean that as a result of the Avera, I was able to set up the mitzvah. It means that the Avera generates a different status in the Chefetz Shel Mitzvah. It's a psul in the Chefetz Shel Mitzvah. The Gemara derives it from Kodshim, Piseach, or Iver, etc. Just like there's a Balmum, which is Pasal of Mizbeach, so too Gozel is Pasal of Mizbeach. It's a psul in the Chefetz. And if you carry a matzah from one rishus to the other on Shabbos, that doesn't Pasal the Chefetz. You've got to steal it. And now you ate the matzah without a bracha l'faneh. You deserve to get patched for that. But that didn't change the status of the matzah. The matzah is not any different because you omitted the bracha. And Rav Shlomo Kluger assumes that if you eat the matzah without a bracha l'faneh, it's a mitzvah b'avera. It undermines and disqualifies your mitzvah matzah. How does he know that? So he says it's gozel. Yeah, but what is gozel? When you leave out the bracha, heaven forbid, and you eat without a bracha, what did you steal? Reb Shlomo Kluger thinks you stole the matzah, the object that you ate, which is hegdesh. I'm not sure. It could be that when the Gemara talks like Zeleah from hegdesh, it means you stole the gratitude, you stole the bracha. But the chefetz itself is not gozel. In any event, that's the assumption of Shlomo Kluger. You can take it if you like it and fly with it. It means tremendous nafkamina. And by the way, according to Shlomo Kluger, I can answer another question. You know, the poskim say you're not allowed to be mafsik between the two brachas, hamotzi lechem min haaretz and al achilas matzah. And I always wondered why. I mean, hamotzi lechem min haaretz is a birchas HaNehenin, whereas al achilas matzah is a birchas mitzvah. Why do we have to join them and integrate them together without any hefsek? According to Shlomo Kluger, I understand it very well because it's all part of the entity of removing Zela. And if you don't recite Hamotzi Lechem Min Haaretz, then your bracha of Al Achilas Matzah is not going to help you very much because you're not going to be yotzi the mitzvah of matzah. So these two brachas go together, hand in hand, as one entity. Now you begin to appreciate why is it that if a person is mevatel the mitzvah birchas HaNehenin, the Gemara tells us that haperos lokim. What does that mean, haperos lokim? So the commentaries want to understand why is that Seder Zeraim begins with Masechta Brachas. Why do they put Masechta Brachas, which seems to have the least connection to Seder Zeraim, and they put it at the very beginning of Zeraim? And the answer is that the success, or chas v'sholom, the opposite, in growing peros is dependent. Where's the key? We think it depends on rain. We think it depends on other climatic conditions, on charisha and zriya and ktsira, etc. No, it all depends on the bracha. The bracha that you make on the peros is going to determine the success or lack thereof of gidol haperos. And that's what the Gemara says, that if you're in violation of bittul bracha, then haperos lokim. Lokim means that they won't be healthy. The crop will be a failure. And therefore the bracha is so critical that Masechta Brachas is at the top, at the head of all of Zeraim, because the success of Zeraim, or chas v'sholom, the opposite, depends upon brachas. And according to Shlomo Kluger, it makes a lot of sense. Why should the Paris be lokim? Because the answer is that you have converted the peros by being mavatal the bracha into a mitzvah baba avera. There's an avera of gezel that's chal on the peros, and that's going to impede the success and the growth development of the peros. So the schus of the bracha will now generate the success of the brachas, and we see again the connection between the bracha and the pri itself, the cheft of the pri. In fact, I would add another footnote here. I'll call up the author and ask him if he doesn't mind. And I would say the following, that if you pick up a fruit in your hand, the Shulchan Aruch paskins, if you recite the bracha on the fruit in your hand, and then you drop the fruit, then you have to make another bracha. Why? But the answer is, according to Shlomo Kluger, the bracha is chal on the chefta. It's not just that I fulfill my personal chovas gavra to express and acknowledge my gratitude to Hashem for having created the peros and given me the ability to benefit from the peros. No. It's inherent in the fruit. Once I pick up the fruit, I'm saying that my bracha will be a piton on the hegdesh of this fruit. And if I drop it, then my bracha can no longer be chal on this fruit. And once again, we understand now beautifully why is it that Birchas HaNehenin, which is a bracha lefaneh, is more chomer than the bracha lachrei, in the sense that bracha lefaneh is required even on a mashon, no matter what small volume, minuscule volume of food or drink, I have to make a bracha. But the answer is because when it comes to gzela, when it comes to me'ilah from hegdesh, it matters not what the shear you're stealing is, because we're talking about an Isser Hana. Isser Hana is Hana b'mashu. Again, there are other dinim, which I'm not going to get into now, if we learn Masechta Me'ilah, about a karba me'ilah. Karba me'ilah depends on a certain volume. But even that doesn't really depend upon a volume. It depends upon a value. It's got to be a shava pruta. And now we want to introduce a mind-boggling chiddush of the Pnei Yeshua. Joe? So I can't hear you talking to me from so far away from Canada. How could I hear you?
Right. Just to clarify, you said with regards to you make a bracha on a fruit and then you drop it, you would have to make another bracha on another fruit, right? That's what you mean.
Or on the same fruit.
On the same fruit?
Yeah, it could be on the same fruit. Yeah.
Well, how do we understand it that when we say that when you make a bracha on something that patters all the fruit that has the same, which would be the same?
I would say the following, that all the fruits of one min are mitztaref lebracha, meaning the bracha is chal on one chefta as a representative of the entire min, but only in condition that you have it there accessible to you, and perhaps another condition that you expect and anticipate to eat the other fruit. I want to share with you this chiddush here on page 127 of the Pnei Yeshua, mind-boggling. If you would stop anyone on the street who knows anything about halacha and ask him whether Birchas HaNehenin is the oraisa or the rabbanon, trust me, he's going to tell you it's the rabbanon. But he doesn't know the Pnei Yeshua. The Pnei Yeshua claims that Birchas HaNehenin is the oraisa. And why is that so? He answers because we have something called svara. There are two ways of spelling svara, either with a hey at the end or an aleph at the end. Rabbi Mirsky spells it with a hey at the end. I'm used to it with an aleph at the end. It doesn't matter. It's the same thing. Often, the Gemara says, Iba Yasei Makra, right, following Minoah. Right? From where do we know this? What's the origin? What's the source? Iba Yasei, if you like, Kra, Iba Yasei Svara. Now, whenever you have an Ibais Ema, the Ibais Ema is an ample substitute for the first explanation, which means that there's no difference between whether I tell you it's from a Kra or it's from a Svara. A Svara has the same status as a Kra. And furthermore, Very often the Gemara uses the language, you could do a word search in Barilan, Lama likra svaro. What do you mean Lama likra? If it's a kra, it's doraisa. If it's a svara, it's the Rabbanan. Name says in Pnei Yeshua, a svara is doraisa. But I have to warn you, not your svara or my svara. The Gemara's svara. No, svara has to be one of the midos shator nidreshes. I mean, there are regulations and laws that govern svara. You can't just come up with your own svara. But the Gemara has a svara for Birchas HaNehenin, Kol HaNehenin, and Olam Hazeh B'lo Bracha Kilu Moal, and the Torah says Lashem Haaretz U'Meloah, and what that means is that we derive the chiyuv of Birchas HaNehenin from a svara, and svara, says the Pnei Yeshua, is doraisa. So the Nod Yehuda, who is more or less a contemporary of the Pnei Yeshua, a little bit later maybe, he says, what are you talking about? We have a principle called Safek Brachos Lahakel. Or as my good friend Rabbi Weber would call it, Sabal. I mean, I only heard that in Toronto. To me, a Sabal is the schlepper who helps you move from apartment to apartment. Anyway, so Safek Brachos Lahakel, how can you say that? If Birchas HaNehenin is the Rabbanon, how can you possibly apply Safek the Rabbanon, Lekula, Safek Brachos Lahakel? Says the Pnei Yoshua, beautiful answer. On the side that you don't need the bracha, right? We're mesupa, we're vacillating. Then you're violating an Isur Doraisa of Lotisa Shem Hashem L'Shav. It's a bracha of Atala. You can't play games over here and say, well, since the chiyuv bracha derived from svara is doraisa, therefore if I don't know whether I have to make the bracha or maybe I don't have to make the bracha, I have to make the bracha because of safek doraisa, you're getting yourself involved in a safek isur, a possibility of violating an isur chamur of enunciating God's name in vain, which is called Shem Hotzah Shem Hashem Hashem. So in Od Yehuda says the following: Eze hisvar shekocha kidoraisa, zu shagemara gufa mamita otso kidoraisa. Whenever you see the Gemara that says lomali cross svara, that's when the Gemara identifies that svara as doraisa. Why do you need a pasuk? But if the Gemara nowhere says lomali kra svara, then that svara is the Rabban. And that's the principle that the Nod Yehuda lays down, and he's totally committed to defend that principle. And therefore, in the case of Oselenos Menolam Azebel Bracha, the Gemara never said Ibai Sema Kra, Ibai Sema Svara, and that Svara therefore is the Rabban. He asked another kasha, which I thought was pretty fascinating. He says that the Svara, if it's Doraisa, as the Pnei Yeshua would have it, that you can't benefit from this world without a bracha, should apply even to a non-Jew. Why does a non-Jew have any different status than a Jew as far as this svara of enjoying the benefits of God's world without a bracha? It's me'ilah. And a guy is not allowed to benefit from Hegdesh, just like a Jew is not allowed to benefit from Hegdesh, and it's me'ilah. Why then do we not find in the Torah, in Halacha, that a guy is chayiv in bracha? When I was a kid, we used to watch television and see how the goyim make brachas before they eat. Do you remember this? I don't know if you'll still see it today. I think it's already a different generation. But in those days, they sit around the table and all that stuff they do. You remember that? I mean, according to the svara of the tzlach of the Nod Yehuda in the Pnei Yeshua, they are being mekayim this halacha doraisa of kol haneneh b'lo bracha kiluma, and it should apply to a ben noch if it's doraisa. However, And I honestly don't know how to thank Rabbi Mirsky enough for the next paragraph. You know that we have many, many Rishonim who wrote commentaries on the Torah. But there's one particular commentary which was unknown until modern times. And maybe we have to thank the Vatican for it, I don't know, but it's called the Chizkuni. It's one of the Balei Tosfos who wrote a commentary on the Torah. And it's becoming quite popular today to study the Chizkuni. I find personally that when I study the Chizkuni, I don't find that many chidushim. It's more or less rechewing what I saw in other Rishonim, especially the Ramban. Which for me, you know, when I think of my stay in Toronto, the Ramban was I really got connected to the Ramban. I once even had a gematria. I tried to work out Midvale is gematria Ramban. I know it didn't exactly work out, but in any event, the Chizkuni seems to have anticipated hundreds of years in advance this breakthrough of the Pnei Yoshua. And where is this Chizkuni hidden? In the 7th chapter of Birchat, and he wants to know, why were the Anshe Dor HaMabul punished for their sins? The Anshe Dor HaMabul did not have the mitzvahs. The mitzvahs came afterwards, when Noach gets out of the Teva, and he and his children and his offspring are obligated to mitzvahs. But the Dor HaMabul was before Noach, or before Noach was given the mitzvahs. And the Chizkuni comes up with a mind-boggling idea. And I quote, Yesh kama mitzvos shechayovim b'nei adam l'shomram mikoach svaras hadas. There's the Maisa. There are mitzvos that we're obligated to fulfill because of svaras hadas. Afal pishalon itzavu. And he asked the kasha, why was Cain held responsible for murdering his brother Hevel? The Isur Shvichas Damim is given to Bnei Noach after the Teva. Why is Cain held responsible? Why is he punished? Says the Chizkuni, Afal Pishlon Itztava Kevich Avram mitzvahs Ka'ela, mitzvahs that are generated by Svaras Hadas, like don't murder your fellow human being. Arei Jehi mitzvah has the same status as a mitzvah d'oraisa. Even if we didn't get the formal sivui. And I think I heard something similar to this from in the name of Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky many years ago. I have to double check. But Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky was hundreds of years, maybe 1,000 years after the Chizkuni. I'm exaggerating, but not by much. Unbelievable chiddush. And it really proves the Pnei Yoshua that Svara is Doraisa. It's like, you know, they asked Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, the founder of the Muslim movement, what's the first mitzvah of the Torah? And he said in Yiddish, Zainish Kinar. Don't be an imbecile, basically. Don't be immature. Operate with seichel. That's the first mitzvah of the Torah. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, a Gemara in Bava Metzia, Daf Mem Zayin, one of the most famous statements in the entire Masechta Bava Metzia. Dvar Torah mos konos. Imagine, I sell you a cow, and you don't make any kinyan on the cow. You didn't do a Maisa kinyan, Mashiach, Bo, whatever it might be. Instead, you gave me mo. So according to Rabbi Yochanan, I'm koneh, or if I'm the mocher, I'm the makneh, and you, the lokeach, the buyer, are koneh, the para, and it's yours, min ha-Torah. Why? Because you paid me mos. Where's the source for that? Rabbi Yochanan doesn't quote a source. Says that the Mukhi Yosef, the source for Rabbi Yochanan is svara bi'alma, just svara. Hadas no senes shetehe mos konos. When you buy something, how do you buy it? You buy it, generally speaking, by paying for it. Therefore, the payment itself is the method and the conduit for kinyan. So we see that you could have a kinyan Toraisa, most minatora, most konos, as I state, that's what Yochanan said, based on Svar. But honestly, I'm not a big fan of this proof. I just want to share my feelings with you. I think the Chizkuni is a very good proof, but I don't know about this Rabbi Yochanan, because Rabbi Yochanan is talking about dinim. He's talking about a chalos kinyan. And svara is really what's primary in a chalos kinyan. You want to effectuate an acquisition, a transferal of ownership, svara rules supreme. In fact, the Gemara talks about something called simtuta. Right here in Tel Aviv, you just say mabruk, you just say mazel tov, but it's a kinyan or a handshake in the Gemara's time. It's all based on that logic. How do we transfer ownership? And that's what Rabbi Yochanan is applying in the case of Mos. But to create a mitzvah or a lotaseh and tell me that if I eat without a bracha chas v'sholem, I have violated a mitzvah d'oraisa because of the svara kol HaNehenin and olam hasebel bracha kilumal, I don't know if you can prove that from Rabbi Yochanan. That's not dinim and that's not chalosim and kinyanim. You're talking about mitzvahs. But the Chizkuni, he's talking about the Aveira of Ritzicha. He's talking about those Aveiros that the Dara Mabul were guilty of. And he's basing himself on Svaras Hadas. And that's equal to a Doraisa. So you may be able to derive a mitzvah Doraisa from Svar. Ibai Sem Akra, Ibai Sem Svar. Again, according to Nod Yehuda, we can only allow that when the Gemara says, Lamali Kra Svarim. It's interesting. There's a famous chakir about the mitzvah chinuch. And there are two famous chakirs. One is it an obligation on the father or on the son himself? And secondly, is it doraisa? Now, how do you combine this? Imagine if I were to tell you that the mitzvah of chinuch is incumbent upon the child when he's higil chinuch, and then I'm going to tell you it's doraisa. How could it be doraisa? And after all, the child is not chayiv in mitzvah doraisa. He's a la bar chiyuv, is he not? Tell a child, you're obligated according to Torah law, because you're 9 years old, to take a lulav, or whatever age he is, Yodel and Anea. He's going to look at you like you're crazy. What do you mean I'm obligated to Torah? I don't have any obligations to Torah. And I think I mentioned this to you on many occasions that Rav Shimon Shkab, Zichron Levrah, he was so impressed by this kasha that he wanted to say, Ibai Sem Akra, Ibai Sem Svara. That if it's a svara to say that a child has to get involved and train himself in mitzvahs before he becomes bar mitzvah, then it could be a doraisa. Wow.
Why you say that it's on the child?
For example, the Rambam says that if you ate a kizayis, which is only Birchat Hamazon D'Rabbanan, and the child ate kibetza or kedei svir. I don't remember all the details now. I have to double check. He could be motzi you in Birchat Hamazon. How could he be motzi you in Birchat Hamazon? He's a la bar chiyuva. All right, so he ate a kizayis. He ate a kibetza. But the answer might be that he's obligated in chinuch. If he is not a bar chiyuva, he can't be motzi you. Whether it's doraisa or d'rabbanan, I don't even have to enter into that question. But there are Rishonim, and by the way, if you're interested in researching this, my favorite source for research is the Encyclopedia Talmudit. It's a great work. Look up chinuch. I have it right behind my back over here. And if you look up chinuch, you will see that many Rishonim seem to assume that the mitzvah of chinuch is incumbent on the child. And the Rambam opens up Hilchos Talmud Torah by telling me that a cut is part from Talmud Torah. Why did the Rambam have to bother telling me that? A katan is part from all mitzvahs. But apparently the mitzvah Talmud Torah is different, and you would have thought that he's obligated to the mitzvah Talmud Torah, even though he's a katan. And there's a lot more here than meets the eye. Okay, now we get to the main. How are we doing on the clock? Good. We have about 15 minutes. Those who can stay, stay. I started a little bit late, so I apologize for that. And now my question to you is the main question of today, what we call a chakira. And this is the most fundamental question with regard to Birchat HaNehenin. What is the geder? What is the definition of Birchat HaNehenin? Two possibilities. One is that it's a matir, I'll explain. Or secondly, it's a kiyum chovasa, a kiyum mitzvasa. The first definition says the following, that just like in Hegdish, if we accept the equation between chulin without a bracha and Hegdish, Hegdish requires a matir. You want to be nenem in a Hegdish, you need a matir. What's the matir? What removes the Isar Hana of Hegdish? Pigeon. And so too, if we, by analogy, impose upon chulin without a bracha the status of Hegdish, you need a matir. You need a pigeon. And what is the matir? Bracha. Oh, Dilma, no. Forget all that. You don't need a matir. There's a chiyuv. There's a mitzvah. Whether it's the Oraisa according to Pnei Yeshua, the Rabban according to the Yehuda, there's a mitzvah to make a bracha. And you cannot be mavatul that mitzvah. But you don't need a matir. And again, if we go back to Reb Shlomo Kluger that we started with today, that he holds that there's an Isaac Zela, you need a matir. And the chefts is guzzle without a bracha. And if it's guzzle, it's mitzvah baba avera, like the case of matzah gzula. Not matzah that he transferred from one rishus to the other, because that's not a chefta of guzzle. And it's fascinating that throughout this entire essay, the Baal Hegyonei Halacha vacillates back and forth. He brings proof to this side and proofs to that side. The most profound proof that he brings is here on the bottom of 128 going on to 129, from the Yushalmi and Brachas at the beginning of Ketzah Mevarchim. And the Yushalmi quotes the Pasuk Lashema Aretz U'Meloa, and he's Moel. Without a bracha, it's Me'il. So Rabbi Avo in the Yushalmi derives this from Gzeira Shava between Pen Tigdash Hamalea, which is a pasuk referring to what's called Ravai, Kerem Ravai, and Malea in the pasuk of Lashem Ha'aretz U'Meloa, even though, again, the conjugation, the vocalization is different, but it's the same letters, and that's enough for Gzeira Shava. So Lashem Ha'aretz U'Meloa and Pen Tigdash Hamalea have the same din. And therefore, Rabbi Avo goes ahead and gives a mashal that the entire world is like a kerem. On the 4th year of the kerem, of the vine producing its grapes, you're not allowed to eat those grapes without a pigeon, like Ma'aser Sheni, right? Ravai has the same din as Ma'aser Sheni. Kacha olam hazeh, hareu kehegdish. The asur le'enos mimenu below pigeon. What could be more explicit if you're looking for a definition of Birchat HaNehenin as a matir than the words of Rabbi Avo in the Yushalmi, asur le'enos mimenu below pigeon. And Rabbi Avo in the Yushalmi asks, ma'u pigeono? So what is the pigeon? We know it in Kerem Ravai what the pigeon is. You make a pigeon onto Mos, take the Mos to Yerushalayim, etc., etc. But what's the pigeon on a loaf of bread? And he says, Zuya bracha. It's the bracha itself is the pigeon. You see that the bracha is coming to be matir, the Isur Hegdish. But now he has a very, very strange Tosefta. And this is on page 129. You'll see it in the main paragraph, line 3, and in footnote number 19, he tells you where to find the Tosefta, which is also quoted as is so common in the Yerushalmi. HaNehenin min ha'olam hazeh b'lo bracha, ad she'yatiru lo kol ha'mitzvos. Ad she'yatiru lo kol ha'mitzvos. Who's talking about mitzvahs? We're talking about brachas. So he quotes here a commentary, which I'm not familiar with. You'll take a look in footnote number 21. And this commentary wants to suggest that the word mitzvos means brachos. And how does he get that from? Because Yerushalmi at the end of Masechta Brachos quotes Rabbi Meir, Ein lecha adam b'Yisrael she'ena osa mea mitzvos b'chol yom. He's referring to brachos, mea brachos b'chol yom, and he calls them mitzvos b'chol yom. So you see that the word mitzvos has the implication of brachos. So when it says hachi atiru lo kol mitzvos, it means hachi atiru lo kol brachos. But what's kol brachos? I mean, I only have to make one brach on an apple. But the answer is on each min and min, whether it's mazon from this or it's sha'akol, fish, and baits, or whatever the case is, on each min I need its own bracha. So achi atiru lo kol brachos instead of kol mitzvos. The Gaon actually changes the girsa. We don't necessarily have to change the girsa, but it means achi atiru lo kol brachos. But we see clearly that the Tosefta defines and classifies bracha as a matir. Achi atiru lo kol habrachos. However, there's a very famous commentary on the Tosefta called the Minchas Bikurim, and he says, "Ein lo liyodam lehenos min olam hazeh sheyakayim kol hamitzvos hatluyas ba'ochel." So hachiyatir lo kol hamitzvos means that, for example, if you have a loaf of bread, you're chayav in hafrashas trumas and maasros, you're chayav in lekes shekabeya. There are many mitzvahs that will be absolutely necessary before you can be matir yourself to eat the lechem. So that's what it means, kol mitzvahs. It's halacha in Droim. At the Droim, that's how I remember when I was in Keren B'Yavne, Tafshin Lamed. I was 18 years old, and I ate at the Rosh Hashiva's house on Friday night. It was Rav Goldvik. I'm talking about Rav Chaim Yankel Goldvik. So he took the Lechem Mishnah into his two hands, and I asked him about it. He told me that, I think it's based on the Arizal, I'm not sure, but that when you take the bread with two hands, which are 10 fingers, those 10 fingers represent 10 mitzvos that are necessary to be fulfilled before you can eat the lechem. And he went through the entire list of 10 mitzvahs. Again, that's only in Eretz Yisrael, but 10 mitzvahs that you have to fulfill before you can eat the lechem. So that's the way the Minchas Bikurim learns this Tosefta, ad she'yatiru lo kol mitzvahs. You cannot benefit from this world until you fulfill all those many, the whole array of mitzvahs of Zroim that you have to fulfill first. And here, he has a very fascinating proof from the Birchat Harei, and that's on page 130. But before that, I want to tell you what I think is shot in the Tosefta that he doesn't quote here, based on the Chazdei David. The Chazdei David of David Pardo from Italy, almost 4 centuries ago. He was a prolific writer. I have many of his Sforim. He wrote the Mitzudas Tzion, the Mitzudas David on Tanakh, many Sforim. Mizmor David. He has the Sefer on Yoredeah. He has many Sforim. But he has the Chazdei David on Tosefta. In the Chazdei David on this Tosefta, he has an amazing chiddush. He says that ad she'yatiru lo kol mitzvahs in the Tosefta means that mitzvos, like I'm about to take a lulav, I'm about to eat a matzah, about to hear the shofar, mitzvos have the same status as chulin with regard to a bracha. And just like I can't eat this loaf of bread, I'm enjoined from doing so before I recite the bracha, so too I'm enjoined from taking the lulav for the sake of the mitzvah of lulav until I recite the bracha. So I discussed this once with Rabbi Ilson, Shlita, Reb Chaim. In those days, we used to learn Chavrusa many, many hours a week. And he told me that he heard once from Rav Soloveitchik that if you look carefully in the Rambam writes at the beginning of Hilchos Brachos, Kishem shemevarchim ala ochlim kach mevarchim ala mitzvahs. And the Rav pointed out the word Kishem, that there's an equation here between Birchas HaMitzvos and Birchas HaNehenin. The source for it would be, according to the Chazdei David, this Tosefta in the 4th parak of Brachos. Achi atir lo kol mitzvahs. That it means two things. Number one, if you want to benefit from this world, you need a matir. And number two, if you want to do a mitzvah, you need a matir. And the Chazdei David goes even further. He says there's a kal v'chomer over here. In the case of being nenem and olam hazeh, that's called kachim kalin. It's a lower level of hegdish. In the case of a mitzvah, he says a mitzvah is called kachim kachim. If you need a bracha as a pigeon in kachim kalim, how much more so do you need a bracha to be podek kachim kachim? That's the Chazdei David. And now he quotes the Gemara in Brachos Mem Gimel Amid Beis. Rava says, "Minayin lebirchas hareach." How do we know that we make a bracha on smelling? And Rav answers, "Mishum shenemar pasuk in Tilim, kol haneshama talka." Tahalel means with a bracha. Ezi davar shaneshama nenes menavein aguf nenes hareach. Why did Rav have to derive from a special limud, a special drasha in the Yalfutza, Birchas Hareach? We have a halacha in general, Birchas HaNehenin, Lashem Haaretz U'Meloa. Why did he need to find a source for Birchas Hareach? After all, he's nene from the Reach. So now that we've equated Birchas HaNehenin with Pidyon of Hegdesh, we understand what bothered Rav's mind. The Gemara says in Psachim, on Daf Chavav Mideis, Kol Umar V'Reich Ein Behem Mishum Me'ila. So imagine that they're burning something of Hegdesh on the Mizbeach or wherever it is, or the Ketores that they burned on the Mizbeach HaPnimi, and I benefit from that smell. Gemara says it's not me either. Is Memela, when I want to be nenemi from Reach, there's no need for a bracha in the Havamin of Rav, because there's no Me'ila on Reach. If there's no Me'ila on Reach, then I don't require a bracha. And again, it all fits in if we assume that the bracha is a matir for the Isser Hekdesh and it's Ke'en Pidyon, but I don't need a matir for Reach, because Ein Bo Mishum Me'ila. Kamash Malan, the pasuk says Kol Haneshama Tahal Ka. If not for the pasuk that says you need Tahalel Ka, and the word Neshama is a reference to what? To Reach, I would not know that Reach requires a bracha. From this point on, to the end of the essay, which I don't know if we have time today, maybe we'll have to continue this next week if you're interested. He wants to bring proofs to the other side, namely that Birchas HaNehenin, the Geder, the definition, is not a matir to remove an Isur, but rather a mitzvah. That if I'm benefiting from God's world, the halacha commands me to express my gratitude in the form of a brach. And the most important proof for this is the Gemara in Brachos Daf Chaf Aleph about a Balkari. The Gemara says that a Balkari is allowed to eat without a brach. We'll see it later by an onen. How could you allow a Balkari to eat without a bracha? A Balkari could be potter from certain mitzvahs. An onen, Rahman al-Islan, could be potter in a mitzvah. He's not allowed to do averos. Is an onen allowed to shoot you in the head? So the answer is that in the case of Birchas HaNehenin, we're dealing with a mitzvah. We're not dealing with an Isur. If we were dealing with an Isur Me'ila, the way we tried to prove until this point, then certainly a Balkari would be included in that Eitzer. How can we possibly entertain the idea that the Balkari will eat without a bracha, an Onein without a bracha? Again, I don't know how many of you people, gentlemen, you're probably in my age bracket, so you probably had aninus in the past. Rahman al-Itzlan. It's the strangest thing about an aninus, to eat without a bracha. I had a shayla, I was on an El Al plane as an Onein for 11 hours. What do you mean, to eat without a bracha? It's like nitchayah. But that's the halacha. If you're an Onein, I'm not sure if you're an Onein if you're on an El Al plane. That's a different child. How can we allow that? But the answer is that Birchas HaNehenin is a mitzvah. If you're obligated in the mitzvah, then you can't eat without the mitzvah. If the Torah says your mitzvah, your obligation is to express your gratitude to the Almighty in the form of a bracha before you eat without a bracha, you've insulted the Ribbon Shalom by being mevatel this mitzvah. But it's all a matter of mitzvah. It's memela, if you have a person who's not chayav in the mitzvah, he can eat without a bracha. And that's the case of a balker. Tremendous raya that the gather of the bracha is a mitzvah. And he who's not chayav in that mitzvah, and he's not mevatel it by leaving out the bracha, he's allowed to eat without a bracha. What generates the isur, it's not an isur per se, it's a chovas bracha. You're not allowed to eat without a bracha, but that's only a spin-off of the fact that you have a chovas bracha.
Does that explain why the goy hasn't have the brachas? Would you be able to explain it on that point?
Well, no, we were asking a different question. The Yehuda's objection against the Pnei Yoshua was that if you're telling me Ibai same as Svara, then that Svara applies to a guy. He should be chayiv in the mitzvah, again, whether it's an Isur or a Chova, but it should be a Doraisa, Midin Svara, because Ibai same a Krah, Ibai same as Svara.
But if it's a mitzvah, they don't have that mitzvah. They only have.
Why not? Why not? Why shouldn't they have a mitzvah? If, according to Pnei Yoshua, you derive mitzvahs from Svara, and there's a svara that also lehenos min olam hazeh b'lo bracha, don't be an ingrate and enjoy God's world without thanking Him and expressing your gratitude, and that should apply to a guy. And from a svara, we could derive mitzvahs. We saw it by the Chizkuni, right? The Chizkuni wanted to say that there were generations that didn't have the mitzvahs; they weren't obligated midin tzivui, and yet they will be punished because of svara. How did he call it? Svara sadas. You remember? All right, so Rabosai, let's just see. Yeah, I think we'll have to stop here. So what I want to do, again, it's up to you, gentlemen. I find this fascinating. I would say that we are about halfway through the essay, and it's not yet Rosh Chodesh Adar. And even if it was Rosh Chodesh Adar, which it will be by next time we meet, it's only Adar Aleph. And nothing against Adar Aleph. I don't want to insult Adar Aleph. You know, I often think that the main Adar is Adar Aleph. You have to know about bar mitzvahs and stuff like that. When do you get bar mitzvah if you were born in Adar? And there's two Adars. But be that as it may, it's not Purim time yet. You know, it'll be another, shall I say, 6 weeks till Purim. Does that make sense? Chodesh Adar, yeah, about 6 weeks till Purim. Especially in Yerushalayim, we celebrate on the 15th. So I don't know if you want to start Purim, that's up to you, or continue here in Birchas HaNehenin. It's, you know, we can take a quick vote now if you want to demute yourself or if you want to just hold up your hand or I don't know what. All in favor of continuing in Birchas HaNehenin, raise your hand. All right, nobody. Oh, we got 2 votes. Okay.
3.
Three. Okay, so I can vote also. So that's 4. 4 out of 6. Wait a minute. There's somebody here named Mr. User. I don't know who Mr. User is. That's not a Jewish name, is it? Oh, yeah, User. Oh, yeah, Taka. There was a guy named User. And there's Chaim over here. All right. Anyway, you'll send in your vote by proxy. We take, you know...
okay.
Chaim, do me a favor. Take off your mask just for a second so I can hear you.
Birchas HaNehenin is okay.
Okay, so we got If we get an okay from the Spaniard, then we know for sure it's okay. Que pasa, senor? Amigo,
Okay.
my good friend, Chaim.
Thank you.
Where are you, on a boat? You look like you're on a boat.
No, at a bus stop.
On a bus stop. Okay. I hope it's not snowing. In Toronto, from time to time, it snows. But here it's kind of rare, so they're expecting
maybe
snow
they'll send us
tonight.
some snow tonight.
I'll be honest with my experience in Israel, they tell you a week in advance it's going to snow, and then they do the countdown every day. Oh, in 6 days it's going to snow. In 5 days it's going to snow, and it never snows,
I know.
And if it snows, it lasts for about 10 minutes, I'm saying it's just slush. All right, anyway, so Bli Neder will try to continue with Birchat HaNehenin, and that would be good. Okay, then?
Sure.
All right, thank you so much. Have a
Have
great weekend.
Rav, turn off the machine for it. Turn off the tape for a second.
Oh. Second, I have to learn how to do that. I know how to do that.